right, this is a quick introduction to color theory and tempera paint. So I imagine you already have a little bit of experience with color theory and you have probably used tempera paint before. So this is just to kind of get us all on the same page so that we know the terms that we're talking about. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and present color theory and tempera paint. So tempera paint is a water-based medium. It is not permanent, but it will stain. So that means if you get it on your clothes, while you can wash it out, it will or possibly could stain, especially with lighter fabrics. Water-based also means that you use water for cleanup and that you can use water to clean out your brushes and switch colors and things like that. It is not permanent, which means once you paint it and it dries, you can re-wet it and lift it back up. But again, it will stain or it could stain. Tempera paint should be opaque, not transparent. So this is a difference between tempera paint and watercolor. As tempera paint is applied, you do want it to be solid and not see-through, in other words, opaque. Tempera paint generally does come out transparent with one layer, but you can use multiple layers to build it up to be more opaque. Again, it kind of just depends on the color. Lighter colors tend to be more transparent and you might need more layers to make it opaque. Other water-based media that you might be familiar with include acrylic. So it is also an opaque medium, but it is permanent, which means once it dries, it kind of forms a waxy or plastic layer. You cannot re-wet it. And then watercolor. Watercolor is water-based. We use water to rinse out our brush and even to thin down the paint. But it is not permanent and it is transparent. Also in this discussion, I don't talk a lot about it, but is a painting medium called gouache. Gouache is very similar to tempera paint. It can be acrylic. It can be more like a tempera painting base also. All right, so just a little comparison here. When I talk about transparent, translucent, and opaque, transparent really does mean that you can see through it. Translucent is kind of semi-transparent, and then opaque, yes, you can see through it a little bit, but it's generally pretty solid. So now we need to talk about color. Color is a very complex element of art. And what we need to think about is that objects have no color at all. Rather, they reflect certain wavelengths of light. So, for instance, a white object, which we can see up here, the light, which has a color spectrum, white light is made up of a full color spectrum, like shown down here, through red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. This is where we get that acronym Roy G. Biv. If you've ever heard of that, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Those are all wavelengths or different wavelengths of light. And white light is made up of all of those. So when white light hits a white object, it reflects all of the wavelengths. So all of the colors are reflected. When white light hits a dark or black object, it absorbs all the wavelengths and no color is reflected. When white light hits a red object, the red color is reflected, everything else is absorbed. So white light, all of these rays, if we look at the bananas, the whole spectrum of white light is hitting that bunch of bananas and they're getting absorbed into it, except for yellow. Yellow is what bounces back into our eye. So we actually call color a surface quality of an object. So it depends on the surface of the object. Color has three properties: hue, intensity, and value. And over the next couple lessons, we're going to learn more and more about this. We are really dealing with hue today. And then tomorrow and the rest of this week, we're going to be talking about value. Later in the next lesson, we'll be dealing with intensity. So when we look at hue, hue is the name of the color as we can identify it on a 12-step color wheel. So red, green, etc. Colors that are not on the color wheel. Pink. Pink is not a hue. Red is the hue. And then pink is just a different intensity or value of the hue red. So we're going to start to kind of simplify colors down into the 12 colors that you find on the color wheel. The intensity is how much color is present. So very intense is very saturated, has a lot of that color. Less intense or dull is kind of the opposite, it's not saturated. And then value, these things seem like they're the same thing, but it's different. Value is how light or dark a color is, how much black or white is in it. So I know everybody's screens look different, but if I look at, let's say, this swatch right here, I would first identify the hue. Probably I would say that is a blue-green. I would say it is a little less intense colors. It's not very, very bright or intense, so it's a lower intensity. And the value, I would say it's maybe like a medium to dark value, or what we call a low value. So when I look at this color, I can try to place it based on the hue, intensity, and value, or I can describe it using those terms. All right, just a note about neutrals. This is going to come up over and over and over again. We've already started to deal with it a little bit, but black, white, and gray are not colors. They are values. So they do not appear on traditional color wheels. We refer to them as neutrals. Neutral means without color. So black, white, and gray are those kind of traditional neutral colors. They have, even though we call them color, they're not actually a color. But it is like you could find a bottle of paint that's white. You could find a bottle of paint that's black, but it's not actually a color. So when we look at a 12-step color wheel, you will not find black, white, and gray, but we do use them when mixing colors. All right, so there are three main categories of colors, and you're going to be labeling these on your first tempera painting worksheet, and you're going to be mixing colors. So what we have first, we have our primary colors, red, yellow, blue. And those are the colors that you can use to make all of the other colors on the color wheel. So different combinations of them produce different hues on the color wheel. Secondary colors, this is really not a good representation of what the secondary colors are. There's only three secondary colors, green, orange, and violet. That is results when we have about equal mixings of the primary colors. So if we take about the same amount of red and blue and mix them together, then we are going to get violet. If you mix about the same amount of yellow and blue, then we get green. So there's only three secondary colors. The tertiary colors are all these colors that have hyphenated names. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, red, violet. Those are 6 tertiary colors on the color wheel, and they are made by the rough way to say it is unequal mixing of primary colors. So if I take a little bit of red and a lot of yellow, I'm going to get a yellow-orange. If I take a lot of red and a little yellow, I'm going to get a red-orange. So then I've kind of already gone over this. There are only 3 primary colors. Jacob Schaefer introduced this idea that these 3 basic hues make all other hues. In a subtractive system, which is what we're doing when we deal with paint, the 3 colors mix to make black. The secondary colors, or as I was saying before, there are only 3 of them, orange, green, and violet, made by near equal amounts of two primary colors. And then we have the tertiary or intermediate. Now, I use these terms interchangeably. So if it's not primary, it's not secondary, it's going to be tertiary or intermediate. And you'll see them in different places referred to as one or the other. So we are going to be based off this 12-step color wheel. It has gone through a lot of iterations. We see Harris made a color wheel here with more than 12 steps. Goethe in 1810 made a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-step color wheel. But basically it is those rainbow colors, Roy G. Biv, arranged in a circle. So these are the things we're going to be practicing later, making tints and shades and tones. This is a great way to create variety in your painting by mixing your pure hue with white or black or gray. And then we're going to be talking about color schemes in the next segment or lesson. So that's your quick introduction to color theory. And it is also a little bit of information about tempera paint.